Hello, good morning. I'm getting strangled by my IEMs. How are you? It is Friday, May 2nd. Cheers. I have 3 coffees brewed. Yes, 3 to prepare for this momentous occasion. Good evening, Mo. Buenas noches. Buenas noches. I have to think about that. It's kind of painful. Um, So in El Salvador, what I found fascinating, I do continue to find fascinating, is everyone you meet, when they greet you, they're like clocks. I swear, they will say buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches, like clockwork, and they just know what time it is. And what was hilarious was in my last trip last week, I walked past someone and said buenas to them, which is um, my gringo cheat. It's the shortcut, the more casual way of just saying, hello, good day, without having to specify the time because I'm like, I don't know what time it is. And the guy said, I think he might have said buenas noches instead of buenas tardes. And he instantly knew. And he laughed. As soon as he said it, he walked past me and he laughed because he knew. And I was like, wait, is it nighttime? I had to think about it. So that was the first time that I've ever encountered someone who made the mistake on the time. But it was at a resort. He might not have been a local, so I don't know where he was from. But man, the Salvadorans are on it. Anyway, so that is a horse in Berlin. You're just driving along. There's a horse side of the road. There are actually 2 or 3 horses hanging out. Not in the greatest shape in the world, but they're just hanging out. So, come on in here, ask questions. Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and Buen Provecho. This is my desayuno típico at the Beach Break Hotel in El Zonte, El Salvador. And it's a beautiful spread. It was pretty good. I've had slightly better, but it was quite good. And I didn't realize they had pan francés, so I made the mistake of ordering toast, but it was also good. So there we have toast and queso. I forget the name of toast. Pan de caja, pan de tostada, something like that. And then we have frijole licuado and platanos. So it was excellent. And yeah, and the reason I have that photo is because last week, la semana pasada, on Thursday night, whole family flew to El Salvador. And this is my daughter and I at LAX in the fancy schmancy, what do they call it, Star Alliance Lounge. So because I have paid absurd amounts of money to Avianca for their Life Miles program, I am able to sneak in and pretend to be fancy in the Star Alliance Lounge. And so on Thursday night, I desperately needed a lounge, a meal, and a place to relax that was quiet. So I was able to sneak one family member in. The rest of my family I had to dump off in the main terminal. But Sarah and I had a good time and had some snacks and hung out. And then we arrived. If you know what this photo is, you will know that this is the entry or the when you enter the airport in El Salvador, you can take a photo in the chairs that resemble the presidential palace. So they also have a nice photo of the president and his wife there, but there we go. So those flags, I swear, those are the most meticulously hung flags I've ever seen. So yeah, that's what you do when you arrive at the El Salvador airport. And breaking news, they have, it's kind of funny, but it's kind of nice because it's been a hassle. They have dropped the $12 entrance fee, the visa fee. It's just this perfunctory fee where you pay $12 and you get a little ticket. They have dropped that for foreign visitors when you visit El Salvador. So now, when you visit El Salvador, you show your passport, you say hi, you say I'm going to the beach, and you just walk right in. No $12, no cash, no credit card, no no feeble attempt to pay Bitcoin for that $12 because that didn't work very well for me at least. And so no $12. So yeah, now that was for adults only. They didn't charge that for minors or kids, but now you don't even have that. You literally just sail right through. And if you've been there, it's usually a pretty fast process. So that's kind of handy, kind of nice. And we stopped by Berlin. By stop by, I mean we drove the 3+ hours to get to Berlin in the morning. We stopped and had pupusas at La Infancia Pupuseria. Those in the know will know what I'm talking about. And this is in Berlin at the Overlook down by 303 Cafe at the north end of town. A beautiful overlook, and there's a restaurant right above my head. We haven't checked that out. We need to research that. But we had a good time in Berlin. It was beautiful. And we went to Alegria, a nearby town, for pupusas because this restaurant does have excellent pupusas. I forgot the name. And we had 19 people that we pulled into that restaurant there. And we had to rearrange 3 or 4 tables to get everyone there. My daughters, we have Anna, David, Kevin, Becca was there, and then mom and aunt, and then Wayne. And we had James, my wife, and Tanya, and Fabricio, Daniela, and Mauricio, and Jocelyn, and Ronald, and of course, Melvin, who ate, I think, 6 or 8 pupusas in one sitting, which, crazy. That's a lot of food. Anyway, we had a great time. And then, of course, you cannot leave Berlin without your secret shipment of 30 bags of coffee from Good Beans El Salvador. And, if you want some awesome coffee from El Salvador, Good Beans El Salvador ships to the US, to Europe. Asia, you may have to check which country you're at, but you can contact Gabe and just see if he can ship there. He ships via DHL Express, and yeah, so you can get a 5-pack of Guara or Toragos and enjoy El Salvador in your home. And there is a new finca, a new coffee farm in Berlin coming online, Finca de la Cruz, I believe, or Finca La Cruz, run by Harry and Prem, and I snuck 2 brand new bags of coffee, don't even have a label. I forgot to bring it with me, but yeah, Berlin is going to have its own finca, cranking out some premium coffee. It's quite good. I think it's really good. I have a cup of it right here. This is cup number 3. It's my emergency backup cup. And while driving from Berlin to El Zonte, we got routed through San Salvador. It was not pretty. It was a bit of a nightmare and needed a bathroom break. And lo and behold, a gleaming Pollo Campero appeared on the side of the road, and I veered across 2 lanes and drove in their parking lot like a madman. And we visited Pollo Campero. The family picked up some fried chicken and snacks from Pollo Campero, and we were back on the road down to the beach. So we made our pilgrimage to the Holy Land of Pollo Campero. And if you've ever flown back from El Salvador or Guatemala, perhaps, you know that the plane will smell like Pollo Campero because people bring bags of the roasted chicken on the plane or fried chicken and bring it home. So quite a tradition. And we made it to El Zonte. Beautiful El Zonte. We stayed at the Beach Break Hotel. Cozy little place, inexpensive, very nice. I really love it. And then Tanya and I headed to the beach, checked out El Zonte Beach, which is a black volcanic sand. And right behind me, you will notice a rock and some waves. That is where my cell phone is currently residing. Under the waves with SpongeBob and Poseidon. And yep, I donated a cell phone to the ocean of El Zonte. So that was fun. I don't recommend it, but I recovered okay. And then lastly, we headed from El Zonte to Royal Decameron Salanitas. And this is a huge resort on the western coast of the country and can have several thousand people there, an all-inclusive resort. depending on whether you like all-inclusive resorts, it's a pretty chill place if you like to get sunburnt and hang out by the pool. So we had a good time. And there we go. The family photo at the beach. That was in El Zonte, pre-cell phone donation to the ocean. And yeah, so we had a beautiful vacation. So I do recommend visiting El Salvador if you're up for a nice, sunny, warm beach vacation. Or you can stop by Berlin and check it out. And unfortunately, before I left, while I was still in El Salvador, we learned that Tim died of a heart attack, unfortunately. And um, people were hanging out with him that day, that morning, and he had chest pain. And unfortunately, he passed away very promptly. And Tim was just a main character of Berlin. He was, I believe he moved from Florida, originally from Upper East Coast in the US, and he moved to Berlin, just decided to move his whole life to Berlin, El Salvador, and help set up the expat community there. He started what was called the Standard, which is was becoming a great bed and breakfast. He had his kitchen there. He had a couple of rooms or apartments for rent. He had a pool, a garden, chickens, rabbits, you name it, and people would go there and hang out. It was just the place to go for all the expats to gather and meet and hang out and have a drink or some food. And so he will be missed. His memorial service is today in Berlin, El Salvador, and David is helping out with that. Nicest guy, like really, really unfortunate and sad to have him go, but not quite sure how to fill his place, but really amazing guy. So yeah, that's two friends that I've lost in the last 2 months to heart attack. It is very strange, but yeah. So thank you, Tim. It was great knowing you. And after we returned from El Salvador, I was exhausted, and we got home at about midnight. But on Sunday, it turns out that there was a community dance performance. So I went there with my 10-year-old SLR camera, dusted that thing off, had to charge the batteries. I hadn't used it in years. And little trivia about me is I used to do dance and stage photography. I was trained by I would say, one of the top ballet photographers in the world. He's a professional photographer who flies around the world and photographs the top ballet companies throughout the world. And he was the main photographer for the Russian ballet companies. And he would fly all around the world, meet them, and photograph all of their performances. So yeah, that is how I learned how to do stage and dance photography. And so I do not have sufficient equipment to photograph this. Unfortunately, it's one of the most challenging things to photograph. And so it requires just thousands of dollars of camera equipment and lenses to do a good job. But I know the technique, so I was able to eke out a few photos here. So these are the performance, really beautiful. I particularly like that one. It's got kind of a peacock vibe. But the reason I was photographing this is because my wife is part of this dance organization. And this is multiple dance groups that come together for a community performance. But that is my wife in one number, and then that is my wife in another one. So I was enjoying taking photographs and got to see her dance. So that was a nice performance. And yeah, Ted says, rent what you need when you need. That's a good idea. Maybe I should try that. I was looking at, so I have a old Canon D70 and the autofocus is not working right. I bought it used and I think it's broken. It doesn't focus properly. And I only have f4 lenses, which are just, it is so frustrating to photograph this with a slow f4 lens. And they're L lenses, but they're just not good enough. You need at least a $2,500 lens to do this justice. So yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I will rent it and give that a try. But anyway, yeah, that was a good weekend and we enjoyed that performance. And this is a public service announcement. Take a drink. Yeah, Ted says for low light Sony. So My streaming camera is a Sony. And, I've used Canon since, I don't know, early 2000s. So that's kind of what I know. But Canon has not quite kept up in many respects. They now have a mirrorless line. Their professional line is excellent, I'm sure. But yeah, Sony has really rocketed up with their technology. But I don't want to spend thousands of dollars on a new camera. I'll use it a couple times a year. So yeah, anyway. Yeah, Brad says Sony mirrorless as well. And so that's what this is. I have a Sony A6100 for the streaming, phenomenal quality, like hands down. But I would have to get another body, which is, for the better ones, it's at least $1,500, $2,000. And then you're talking thousands of lenses. I'm like, nah. It's like me buying a race car when I only drive a race 2 times a year. I just can't justify it. So I need to figure out a budget solution. So the PSA this week is second order thinking. And I have talked about this before, but I have had just several painful interactions with people where they can think about this far in front of their nose. And I'm just like, are you pranking me? Is this a joke? And it's like people who try to give me advice or tell me what to do or tell me what is not possible. And I'm just like, really? And I'm not a genius. I am not I'm generally a humble guy, except where I'm just like, you're kidding me. But okay, what is second order thinking? Please, look this up. There's not a lot written about this, but it's just more of a general concept. It's not this, as far as I could tell, I couldn't find a lot of articles on it. Second order thinking, or higher order thinking, I prefer to call it, refers to the cognitive process of looking beyond the immediate, obvious outcomes or consequences to consider the longer term and less apparent consequences of actions or decisions. So if you say, oh, I'm going to buy a camera. Ooh, I can take pretty pictures. Okay, that's like the initial consequence of that. But you may go into debt and you may like all these other ancillary consequences may come into play. It involves asking questions like, and then what? If I do this, what happens? If I write this code that locks down this field and prevents a user from editing that field, what are the potential consequences of that? Well, guess what? The customer's going to call you and say, we need to edit this field. And you're like, I told you so. And they're like, but we never needed to edit that field before. It's like, well, I'm going to tell you, you're going to need to edit that field at some point, right? And so you need to anticipate the ripple effects and interactions that may follow an initial choice, rather than stopping at the first, most straightforward, obvious consequence or answer. And if this doesn't make sense to you, I beg you to research this and take a look at what this means and constantly think. Every time I run into something, I'm like, okay, the first consequence is obvious. And I'm like, second, third, fourth, how does this play out? What does the branching look like for this decision, this choice, this question, this, action that I'm going to take? So just some examples. And well, here's the analogy, chess. Imagine playing chess and only being able to look at one piece and the immediate squares around it. That is first order thinking. That's it. You're just like, oh, I see a pawn. I'm going to move it one step ahead. That's it. I'm not going to look at any other piece. I'm not going to look at any subsequent moves. I'm not going to look at how it affects my pieces. I'm not going to look at how it affects my opponent's pieces. Like, it's absurd, right? You would never do that. But that's what people are doing every single day when they say these things to me or ask me these questions or make statements. And I'm like, what? Anyway, so you need to stand back, look at the entire chessboard, look at how the pieces interact. And I don't expect you to pull a Magnus Carlsen and see 10 steps ahead and know all the consequences of every configuration of the board. But it's like, hey, if I move the little horsey guy up over here, what can happen, right? If I move my pawn, my queen, my rook, whatever, like just think about at least one or two steps ahead. Please, I beg you. So, for example, someone has lectured me, actually, no, multiple people have lectured me on which laptops I should be using in El Salvador. It is phenomenal. Like, oh, really? How many laptops do you have deployed to your team throughout El Salvador? Oh, no, none. Really? But you're giving me advice on what is required to run a team on low-cost laptops in El Salvador. Like, you should be using Macs. You should be using Dells. You should be using this model. You should be using Panasonic Toughbooks. Like, it is absurd the advice I get about something that people have no idea what they're talking about because they've only thought about like words. They have no idea what the consequences are of those things. An office in El Salvador. Why do you need an office in El Salvador? They can just work from home. Like, these people have not thought through for 5 seconds what it takes to run a team in El Salvador. You don't need AC in El Salvador. And why do you need an office, AC, and laptops? They can just work at home with desktops, work remotely like everyone else. Like, it just blows my mind the unsolicited, arrogant advice I get. And another one was, I lost my phone in the ocean, right? Someone gave me advice on multi-factor authentication and what I should have done to prepare for losing my phone. And if you know me, you know I'm a bit of a geek on MFA and passwords and password managers. And I'm like, wait, you're telling me the consequences of losing my phone and how that affects my MFA storage. And they were completely wrong, right? They're like, oh, you lost your phone, therefore you cannot tweet. I'm like, what? Very bizarre. And this is a complete lack of second order and higher order thinking. And I also just got advice on passwords and keys and managing secrets. Like, oh, if you back up your password and you lose that backup, you've lost all of your passwords, like your master password. Like, what? You don't think I have multiple backups of this somewhere? It's really bizarre. So anyway, that's my rant. Second order thinking, folks. It's right up there with common sense with how rare it is. It is shocking how little effort people expend when trying to think, and words just come out of their mouth, or they tweet it, or they email it. You're like, please just spend 5 seconds. That's all I ask. It's like, this happened to this person that I know nothing about. Let me think about that before I just spurt something out and give them advice, right? So anyway, that's my lecture of the week. Please consider second order thinking, higher order thinking, read about it, understand about it. Think of it as a chess game. Don't look at the one section of the board. Look at the entire board and understand the consequences. It applies to coding. It applies to consulting. It applies to GL account design, dimensions, PTEs, app source apps, security, encryption, you name it. Okay, moving on. Weekly projects, proyectos semanales. El Salvador office renovation is nearly complete. We got a few things to touch up, but we basically had to redo the entire office because if you've ever owned a house, you may know what this looks like. My house, I had a $90 project, replace a toilet. It resulted in a $10,000 complete bathroom renovation because when we lifted up the toilet, the floor had been completely eaten by termites. There was no wood left holding up the entire bathroom floor. So the $90 project turned into a $10,000 project. That was the El Salvador office. Adding a few outlets turned into us discovering all the electrical wiring was bad. We had to open everything up, redo all the wiring. We discovered the roof was installed improperly, had to reinstall the entire roof, reseal it, do everything over again. Then you got to repaint. Then we found plumbing issues. So yeah, welcome to my life. And perplexity. Oh, there is a shot of our new electrical panel in the office of Berlin, El Salvador. Let me tell you, this electrical panel in Berlin qualifies as a full-on electrical substation. That's how big this panel is. I know Americans will laugh and say that's a sub panel. It's barely a sub panel for my garage, but that is massive in Berlin. That's like, whoa. I mean, most people have tops four circuit breakers in a house in Berlin, and I'll kind of show you an example of what that looks like. But that was done. We think the electrician did a great job. He was pretty hardcore, wanted everything done perfectly, all new wiring for everything. So yeah, we even had to import wire from other cities to get the correct colors and correct styles. So yeah, that should be good to go, and we should have capacity for 2 more AC units on that. And that's what it looks like outside. And that was a late addition on the left and right there. You will see we have some outlets. That is for a washer and dryer. Because last time I was there, I stayed in someone's house, used their washer and dryer. I was like, okay, this is pretty nice, I gotta say. And my big head's in the way. That is the El Salvador death shower head. I have not died yet, and it is a very economical, cost-effective, and practical way to get warm water in your shower. You can take cold showers, which is the standard method, but this is the luxurious method where you get 120 volts to heat water directly over your head, and you just kind of say your prayers before you take a shower every morning. So yeah, I do not know anyone who's been electrocuted yet. I don't believe. So yeah, we're pretty fancy with our death shower heads in Berlin, El Salvador at the office. And Perplexity, I have finally transitioned. I know I'm months late to this, but I finally purchased a subscription to Perplexity Pro because I am asking this poor tool questions that it's just like, oh dear, will you please stop? Please stop with these stupid questions. But I stopped using Google search long ago. It's horrible, absolutely the worst tool ever. I then switched to DuckDuckGo for a while, and it started to degrade a little bit, I think, and ads started to creep in. So now I have paid for the Perplexity Pro annual subscription. It's $20 a month or $200 for a year if you buy annually. Phenomenal, folks. Like, just ask the question, get the results, just the facts, no ads, no scams, no garbage links. It just works. So I have a little more on that. And binary stream MEM runtime packages. If anyone else is doing PTEs or AppSource apps with binary stream MEM as a dependency, please, I beg you, contact me. Let me know, like, what are we missing? Why is this so hard? We are using Cosmo Alpaca for our pipelines. And I don't know if this is a limitation with Alpaca. We're working with them to try to figure this out. But our understanding at this point is that we need the app with the full source included in that app, whatever that option is in the project to include full source code, in order to have a Alpaca pipeline with an MEM dependency. It's a nightmare, and I don't believe binary stream will release that, which I'm fine with, but even with the runtime package, our understanding is we got a runtime package and it's 24.2.1.ABCDE. It's a very specific BC version, and with Cosmo Alpaca, we can only run with a runtime package of the exact version of BC. It must be a precise match down to the last decimal place, and it simply is not practical. So how are you dealing with a binary stream MEM dependency in a PTE or AppSource app? And is it much easier to do using ALGO for GitHub? If so, we may have to set up ALGO for GitHub for our pipelines where we have an MEM dependency. I don't particularly want to do that, but as far as I know, we're at a dead end with Cosmo Alpaca and MEM dependencies. So hit me up, let me know, find me on Twitter, comment on this on YouTube or Twitter or whatever. Yeah. So open for feedback there. Perplexity Pro. Yes. So no more web search engines, no more ads, no more deceptive links, no more scams. Like, I'm done with it. Perplexity Pro, well worth the money for me. I asked it questions dozens of times a day now, like Microsoft is ending support for basic auth for Microsoft 365's SMTP. How do I modify a .NET app to use OAuth with SMTP? Right? This is happening. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I don't want to know. I don't want to spend 2 days figuring this out. So I just ask it. Rather than sifting through 27 bad articles, I just ask and it gives me an answer. Turns out this is a bit of a dead end. I do not recommend this. Go with Graph API because despite Microsoft claims that this is supported, I and 2 different AI engines could not get this to work. So went down this path, MailKit.NET 451, 452, 462. We had to figure out what framework worked because this is an old project. And yes, so these are the questions I asked it. What is a PRD file in the context of software development? Apparently it's a project or product requirements document. And I looked at all of my ATT cell phone usage. I took screenshots of the summary of the usage each month. I uploaded the last 12 months, 18 months to Perplexity. I had it analyze my cell phone usage and tell me which carrier would give me the best package for what I'm trying to do. It's pretty phenomenal. I didn't want to have to research that. And so, yeah, really cool. I highly recommend it if you haven't tried it yet. On Monday, we had a call with SKSoft. And if you're not familiar with them, they are an ISV in the Business Central and F&O space. And they provide, I would say, like banking integration solution. It's not just software or an app. It's a full-on banking integration solution. Bank connectivity is one of the big elements they provide. So it's like you use this XYZ bank in this country or in this state. They usually have a connection with that bank or they're willing to build one as part of the implementation. So you can get bank feeds, you can do positive pay, whatever, back and forth with that bank. And then they help with the payment automation. So they'll help send the payments to the bank to say, issue these payments to these vendors. And then they help with automation of bank recs. So they have tools to help automate bank rec. And they've just recently added positive pay. And they've had positive pay. They've added Lockbox. That's a newer one. Lockbox and cash receipts reconciliation. So great product. And we had a call and they want to discuss what features could they add? What features are our customers asking for? And unfortunately, the problem we're running into with SKSoft and others is our customers are essentially resistant. It's really hard. It's like pulling teeth recommending a ISV solution for Business Central that will greatly enhance the functionality. And the customers, for better or worse, ask questions like, why do I need a separate product? I'm paying for Business Central. Why doesn't it connect to my bank? And it's like, well, there are a couple thousand banks around the world. Business Central is not going to invest that time and money. And so, yes, there's Yodlee, but if you use the Yodlee, it's not perfect. It has limitations and sometimes doesn't work. And they don't cover every bank in the world. And it goes through Plaid, I think. And there are issues with that. And if you've had Yodlee stop working, you know what the support process is like. So SKSoft is one of a couple banking integration alternatives. So unfortunately, our customers say, why do I need a separate product? Why doesn't BC do this? Why do I want to pay extra for this third party when I'm already paying for ERP? We don't need all those features. We just need 1 or 2 features. We don't need the 97 features that SKSoft offers. So why are we paying for the whole thing? And then even if the customer's open to it, you have the whole requirements, sales process, implementation, training, and like it is one more thing the customer has to deal with. So it's a challenge. And so how do you deal with the hurdle of ISV adoption by BC customers? It's like, and we've spoken to one partner who says, well, I don't even call it an ISV. I don't call it a third-party product. Just say, hey, do you need banking integration? Do you need X, Y, and Z? Great. We have a solution for that. It's part of your package. And they don't even bring it up, which on the one hand, you might say, well, is that slightly deceptive? On the other hand, it's like, no, you're offering them the menu. You're offering them the price, you're offering them the implementation, you're making the call as to what the solution is, and you're not spending 2 weeks deliberating and with excruciating discussions on every nitpicky feature and how much everything is going to cost. Like, hey, here's the package, here's going to cost, right? So, yeah, how do you deal with that? It's very challenging. And we have some customers say, no, I want to manually process every single paper check we receive. And you're like, oh my gosh, really? They're just used to doing that. And that's what Sally in accounting's been doing for 10 years. So, like, why would we pay for a solution that automates this with a lockbox? So that's what we deal with. And as I mentioned, I donated a cell phone to Poseidon on the beach of Playa El Zonte, El Salvador. And I learned a few lessons in this process. As a result of that, I wrote a painfully geeky and extensive blog post, a checklist to complete before and after losing your cell phone. Now, turns out that I was prepared because I travel internationally with a spare cell phone. So I had a beater iPhone 13, more on that later. I had a beater iPhone 13 used with me. So I was back up a couple hours after I lost the phone. I had an eSIM activated in the iPhone 13 and I had my phone restored. It's as if I didn't lose the phone in some respects. So I had a phone with data internationally while traveling, 0 interruptions to my vacation. So that was good. However, while trying to claim insurance, holy bananas, that was an absolute nightmare. Both because, one, it was the first phone, the phone I lost. I swear it's the first phone where I had not fully documented the IMEI, the model number, serial number, and everything. I normally do that. I went and looked. I realized I had not documented the IMEI and model for that phone, which made the insurance claim process a hassle. Also, it's the first time I've ever lost a phone, ever damaged a phone, ever filed an insurance claim on my AT&T insurance. And I discovered they have a bit of a scam going on where they only ask like 2 questions and is very deceptive, and they will instantly deny your claim over and over and over because the question they are asking is not the basis for the review and approval of the claim. And it took me like 5 phone calls, 6 phone calls, and hours of like navigating their process with their nice enough customer service agents who knew nothing about the product or service they were offering. And they let slip some clues that allowed me to understand how they were approving or denying a claim. And I had to reverse engineer that process and find the data that allowed me to get my claim approved for my legitimately lost phone. It's quite a racket they have going on. And unless you know what they're looking for, you will innocently provide incorrect information for an instant insurance claim denial. But after many days of dealing with that, I finally got a replacement phone through AT&T, and immaculate iPhone 15, looks brand new battery, probably new screen, perfect condition. And I set that up, and I now know, do not ever set up a phone from scratch anymore. Just do the data transfer with the iPhone, and it's, a couple minutes later and you're good to go. Do it on Wi-Fi though. I highly recommend that. Do not do it on cellular. And so, yeah, that was good. Worked great. Got my new phone up and running. And in the process, I learned that AT&T now does not require you to call them to unlock a phone, as long as it meets all the conditions and is paid for, et cetera, et cetera. They now say that an Apple iPhone will automatically unlock. So iPhone and Google Pixels, Samsungs do not. Apparently you have to call in and get an unlock for a Samsung. But iPhones will automatically unlock when they are eligible. However, I learned that the eligibility is a 60-day lock period. So you must have purchased the device more than 60 days ago for it to automatically unlock. So even my replacement insurance phone, which should have no lock, does have a lock on it. So in 60 days, I have a calendar reminder to check out that lock. So that was good. And then on Tuesday, we discovered what I'm now calling the boomerang. And that is when you do something not too smart and it comes back and bites you. It hits you and it may take a couple months. As you can see from this screenshot, I created a report extension in October 30th, 31st, November 1st, and I forgot about that report extension because it was a Thursday night. Tanya calls me in a urgent situation, shall we say. We need this report by tomorrow. We need this modified report extension, and you need to modify this statement to do X, Y, and Z. I did that. Somehow I figured out how to do that without AI at the time and got that report extension sent to her to test. I sent this note off to our developer to say, hey, make sure this code gets into DevOps so it gets in our pipelines and gets included in the repo. He was on vacation. He forgot about it. I forgot about it. Tanya forgot about it. And guess what? End of April comes back and bites us because we released a new version of this extension. It did not include my October 31st code, and we lost functionality as a result. So we did not follow the proper process. Code was not checked into DevOps, and voila, it took us several hours to figure out what in the world is causing this issue with the statements. Why is the report extension not working? But we discovered it. So that was a mistake I am calling the boomerang. On the replacement phone and backup phone front, the current state of eBay iPhones is pretty amazing. You can pick up a used iPhone 13, used or refurbished, depending on what you're looking for. I got one for $275. Tanya got one as well. Hers is immaculate, perfect condition, much better than mine. $275 for the base model iPhone 13. Perfectly fine for travel because it is both a SIM slot and supports eSIM. So it might be the optimal option for travel because it has both a physical SIM and eSIM. Because depending on what country, a physical SIM might be easier. However, in my case, I was able to call AT&T, give them the IMEI of the phone, and remotely activate it via eSIM. So it's very convenient for me. If you want a newer iPhone 15, $475. I just got, where is it? iPhone 15, excellent condition, fully refurbished, new battery, $475. No need to go through a carrier, fully unlocked. They work great. I have I have 3 of them now that all work perfectly fine, no issues, no concerns. They sell thousands of these things on eBay. So similarly, my goal is to care as little about my phone as I care about as little as I do on laptops. So you can pick up a ThinkPad T14S Gen 2, the one I'm using now, travel with internationally, $422. Perfect condition, i7, 16 gigs of RAM, touchscreen, pop whatever SSD you want into it. Perfectly functional, works great. Excellent, absolute mint condition laptop, $422. X1 Carbon Gen 9, currently going for $550. Excellent condition. I've purchased from this vendor over a dozen times. Laptops are great. I've returned a few due to issues, but 0 questions on the return. So highly recommend checking that out if you do not want to spend $1,000 on a cell phone or $2,000, $1,500 to $2,000 on a laptop. And Wednesday, miércoles, typos in code. Holy cow. If you're a developer, you understand the problem with typos in code, such as you will modify a report, do a report extension, and you will accidentally mistype the name of a new field, such as this payment reference that is called paymente reference. And that I am attributing to English as a second language of our junior dev. He did not notice this misspelling in this field. But it turns out even our senior developer does this, and I know that I have likely done this as well. So I thought there was no good solution for this because it's code. It's really hard to spell check this. But my senior developer told me that he has recently been using this VS Code extension called Code Spell Checker by Streetside Software. 14 million downloads, and it is a spell checker for source code. It appears to work very well. Even if you have combined words, camel case, snake case, whatever it's called, donkey, cow case, I don't know, it can check spelling of your variable names and method names. It's really impressive. So our senior dev use it. Our junior dev is going to use it and review a new app that he's building. So I highly recommend it because, as you know, once you deploy that table, those fields, game over. Your typo is memorialized forever. And those of you who worked in the Dynamics GP world, if you're OGs, you will know that there were a few fields that were misspelled, and they are forever baked into those SQL Server tables with the incorrect field names. And every time you see it, you're like, come on, man, really? You guys didn't check that? But, it happens. And once that code gets deployed and pushed to production and released to customers, game over. So check out Code Spell Checker, excellent extension. And, before I go to the QR code, PT artifact archiving, we had an issue where we have a PTE and we had a build pipeline, we did not have a release pipeline, and we did not have a next minor and next major. It just got missed for a report extension. As a result, we were looking like, where is the app file? Where's our artifact? It's not in our SharePoint. It's not in our Azure storage. It's not in our consulting SharePoint. We missed that step of the pipeline setup. So how do you manage your PTE artifacts or your app source artifacts for that matter? So when you do a new commit, how do you get your build, your release pipelines to run and save and archive your artifacts and distribute them to your teams? Like, what technique do you use? We have one, but we had a repo where we didn't do the pipelines right. We missed that step of configuring the pipelines, and therefore all of our subsequent archiving and distribution mechanisms didn't fire. Now, it's the first time this has happened, but it's like, okay, so many pieces to get this puzzle working. Like, is there an easier way? I do not consider DevOps archive library an acceptable solution. I'm not going to have my application consultant log into DevOps, go 17 layers deep, and try to find the archive or the artifact that is sitting in a library somewhere. That's crazy. I can barely do that. So our pipelines push the artifact to an Azure storage. And then from there, we have a Power Automate flow that distributes it to our SharePoint sites. I'd love an easier way. I don't know what it is. Maybe we have our pipelines do that. But again, that puts more logic in our pipelines that is less accessible to everyone else in our team. So pros and cons. So that's a challenge we're having. And pretty QR codes. Miss Tanya, our fearless leader, is preparing for Dynamics Con. We're getting booths set up. We're getting the tablecloth thingies. We're getting banners, printed brochures. And she wanted a QR code for Blue Dragonfly. So she was not aware of the process of creating a custom QR code. And you can do just the generic ugly black and white ones. I hate those. Those are so ugly. There are sites, they come and go, that allow you to create these really nice custom QR codes. And the one that I now use, the one that I was using went offline. The latest one I found is called QR Code Monkey. And QR Code Monkey has free QR codes. They do sell another service with other benefits, but this is just the free one. You can create colored. You can add your logos. You can change it from squares to dots and make it look much, much nicer, much more appealing than the basic ugly black and white square QR code. So check out QR Code Monkey. Great service. Gives you all the options. And then we are living in luxury in Berlin, El Salvador. And no, that does not mean a nice car. That does not mean fancy living quarters. In Berlin, El Salvador, high status means you have your own trash can outside your house. The reason for this is because the trash truck comes around once a week. Sometimes it comes at 5:30 a.m. Sometimes it comes at 2:30 p.m. And so the residents of Berlin, El Salvador are forced to listen for this truck, be home, and be ready with their trash cans to give the trash guys to load onto this absolutely monstrous trash truck by hand. Because if you leave your trash out, the dogs will tear it open and make an absolute mess. And then you lose, many residents have to reuse their, looks like a big nylon coffee bag. It's used for shipping. That's what they have to use and reuse. So they give that to the guy, he dumps it out, and they get that back. And that's valuable to them. So, $1 or $2 is pretty important. So this is a luxury. We paid to have this trash can custom made out of metal. We have a welder on hire. He made this for us. So now we can take our office trash, put it in this can, and it gets picked up by the guys, and we don't have to stand out on the street. So that is pretty fancy. We're going to get it painted, and thank you, David, for making that happen. So that is high-class living in Berlin, El Salvador. These are the problems you have to solve in Berlin. And so when people give me advice on El Salvador, it's kind of funny. I barely know anything about El Salvador, but these are literally the problems we're having to solve to have an office there and be efficient and effective for our people. And upcoming events, próximos eventos. DynamicsCon is coming up in 11 days, May 13th through 16th in Chicago. There are discount codes available. If you are not registered, go and register and contact them and you can get a discount code. I got a few via email. I don't remember what they are, but you can get a discount code for a significant discount on registration. DynamicsCon.com and contact them and ask for a discount code. Dynamics Minds is coming up shortly, May 26th through 28th in Slovenia. DynamicsMinds.com. Apparently the hip conference to attend. Summit NA is October 20th through 23rd in Orlando, Florida. SummitNA.com. And we being Tanya and Blue Dragonfly and Tess Team and Shannon with a BC Consulting Group are sponsoring a party in Chicago. So there will be a party in Chicago for DynamicsCon, and there will be the BC Bash in Orlando for Summit NA, the biggest parties of the year for Business Central in the United States. So make sure to register for those parties. I have no idea how. But if you can figure out how, you get to attend. How is that? And then on Thursday, Jueves, May 1st, it turns out, is Labor Day in El Salvador. Every May 1st, no matter what day it falls on, and that is a national holiday. So yesterday, the team got May 1st off for Labor Day. And so, it was a quiet day. Life in El Salvador noise. Oh, this again, people giving me advice on El Salvador is kind of funny because you have no idea the challenges that occur. And this is a house of one of our team members in El Salvador. That's what a house looks like in El Salvador. And that is actually this is a very high-end house in El Salvador, like really nice roof. That is the bare metal roof in El Salvador. Guess what happens in El Salvador after April? It is rainy season from April through October. And when it rains in El Salvador, it doesn't just kind of rain. It rains in all caps, ! Right? And let me tell you, when the rain hits, it pours. Welcome, Eric. Come on in. Have a sip. Cheers. And in El Salvador, in Berlin, El Salvador, when the rain hits and you are in one of these houses and that water hits that bare metal roof, I cannot possibly convey how loud it is. I'm going to have the team test. I believe it is over 90 decibels. And it's not an exaggeration at all. Once the rain hits, you have 90 decibels of nonstop, full spectrum white noise going on. I was on a call with Franklin at night when the rain hit, and his voice started to distort so bad. I'm like, what is going on? Did your headphones stop working and your laptop mic picked up? No, the rain was so loud that the noise canceling Plantronics headset was just struggling to keep up, and his voice became so distorted as it tried to cancel out the noise. And it got so loud that he literally couldn't hear me in his headset. So we had to end the call because the rain was unbearably loud. So there unfortunately there's practically no solution. I have been there during rainy season, and even with a ceiling in the house that I had, it was so loud that with AirPods Pro with noise canceling, I literally couldn't hear a video I was trying to watch on an iPad. So there's nothing you can do. You can't think, you can't hear, you can't listen to music. Noise canceling headphones do nothing. It is an absolutely wild problem to have. And fortunately, it mainly happens at night, the heavy rain. So it's not typically during work hours, but it is wild. And these are the problems we have to solve in El Salvador, like putting trash out in front, having just unbelievable noise canceling technology. So moving on, APIs. Holy cow, APIs, they are absolute landmines. 99% success with integration with an API is simply a failure. We've had two scenarios. One was ours, where we're integrating with a third-party API, and they say, hey, we have a couple APIs, V2, V3, and so we chose V3 naturally, right? Well, it turns out that V3 is missing 70% of the fields. So we have to use both V3 and V2 of these APIs, and we're going down, we think we're doing well, and the fields aren't there. We have to go find them and fix them and do all this crazy stuff to try and get those last few fields. Even worse was a third-party consultant that we know. They have a developer, developed a process where he calls a bound action on the BC API. It was to I think it was to cancel sales credit memo or sales invoice. And when you cancel I forget the exact name in BC, but when you cancel the sales invoice, it issues a credit memo, posts it, and then recreates the sales invoice so you can do an adjustment, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. And then what they discovered is that process worked perfectly. And they're like, yay, we're celebrating. We figured it out, bound actions. We automated the customers, what they call a credit and rebill process. And then the customer said, we want a return reason code on the credit memo line items. Game over, destroyed. Their entire brilliant process they had implemented perfectly was completely destroyed because they got 99% of the way there, and guess what? You cannot supply a return reason code for the credit memo when you use the cancel bound action on a sales invoice. It simply creates a full mirror of the invoice as a credit memo, posts it, and chugs right along. So they had to scrap their entire solution, go back to the drawing board, and I believe they said their current plan is they have to manually create a credit memo mimicking the invoice in order to supply the return reason code at the credit memo line item level. Brutal, brutal. And I fully empathize with them because we have been absolutely killed by this. You get 99% of the way down the road, you find that one landmine, and it is all over. Your budget is blown. You're demoralized. The customer's like, why are you such an idiot? How do you not know this? You can't know. You can't know until you build the entire thing and discover that last requirement. Like, I don't care how good your requirements are. You just get to the very end of the finish line, and right before the finish line, yeah, you're destroyed. So be careful with that. That's higher order thinking that I wish I had. I wish I could be clairvoyant and know what's in the future. BC connection errors. The last week, I have had these. Franklin has had these. I don't know if the rest of our team has had these, but I'm just trying to launch BC. I'm just trying to open the app or get to a page or open table information or whatever. And all of a sudden, I get these errors constantly in a US sandbox tenant or testing tenant, and it says something went wrong. You are not authorized to access this resource. And apparently that's the BC app. And then I refresh and it says something went wrong. Please try again later. Now, about 10 seconds later, if I keep refreshing, it does work, but something is failing in the BC infrastructure. And it looks like an authentication authorization error, but I've been getting these all week long, trying to get into my demo environment. So if you're getting them, like what's going on? No, I have not turned on I probably have telemetry on. I'm not going to dig through telemetry because it's probably just going to show me the same thing. And who do I submit that to? No one cares, but just wondering, like, is it me? Have you seen this? What's going on? Like, come on, BC. Let's fix this. And Summit NA Roadshows, dynamicscommunities.com/summit-roadshow. And Columbus and Chicago and Philadelphia in June, Seattle in July, Madison and Nashville in August. Double check those dates before registering and attending. And I am running late, so Friday, Viernes. I need to work on the DynamicsCon BC technical track sessions. Yes, it's 10 days away, and I need to create a couple presentations. We had a few last minute speaker cancellations, so we're filling in with a couple extra sessions. And we have a full BC technical track. I think we have like 12 different BC technical sessions. So come and join us in Chicago. And last night I did some vibe coding with Cursor and C# to do an O365 SMTP OAuth and Graph API test. And I went down a dead end for about 2 hours, but then, very cool, it eventually gave up after numerous errors and trying different options. It finally said, hey, we're just getting error after error. I've gone in circles. It told me, I give up. I recommend going a different approach. Use Graph API instead. 5 minutes later, it rewrote the entire project, and I had test emails going out. So that was pretty cool. That was with Cursor, with Claude, and really cool. So that was my first full-on vibe coding. I didn't write a single line of code. I just told it what to do like a monkey clicking buttons, and it worked. So very nice. And that is one of my presentations at DynamicsCon, how to use AI. What are the use cases? What are some examples where you could use that in BC/AL development? So we're going to explore that, meaning Henrik, Helgeson, and I. See you there. And then I asked it to create documentation to set up the app registration in Azure. And it gave me detailed documentation because I know how to do it. I don't want to write it. I copied and pasted and sent it off to my colleague. Excellence update, intense BC learning continues. Jocelyn is diving into Power BI. She has done the basic Power BI training. She is now learning the Tanya grade Black Belt Ninja level Power BI reports that Tanya does for our BC customers. And boy, you do not know Power BI. I don't care if you think you know Power BI. Once you see a report that Tanya does in Power BI, you'll be like, yeah, I don't know Power BI. Hardcore. So Jocelyn is learning that from scratch. David was our construction manager and foreman for the office renovation, doing everything from electrical to toilets. And he is now moving on to BC page scripting. He's a man of many talents. And Ronald is deep into Continia expense management training. He's done the training. He's trying to get hands-on, and we're dealing with the account approval process for Continia Partner Zone. And Franklin is jumping back over to the BC Admin API dashboard. He's going to use that code spell checker extension to clean up his code, fix everything, and enhance BC Admin API dashboard. And Q&A, don't have time for Q&A. Gotta go. We have a team call that's going on right now. But this, folks, you need to know what this is if you're going to go to El Salvador. This is a pupuseria. This is La Infancia Pupuseria, right on the highway next to the gas station on your way to Berlin, El Salvador. If you arrive early, just make this a stop on your way. Tell the driver, La Infancia. He'll know what you mean. Stop in, have a breakfast pupus on your way. So you'll get to see chickens, goats, mules, turkeys, and iguanas in the backyard of La Infancia. It's actually pretty cool. So Brad says, code spell checker is a lifesaver. Absolutely. Even English as a native language, you'll make the mistakes. If English is your second language, holy cow, it's essential, at least in our case. So have some breakfast pupusas when you come visit us in Berlin, El Salvador. Brad, I'm looking at you. And there you go. Adios, horsey. I don't know how to say horse in Spanish. I'm sure someone will tell me. And that is episode 164, May 2nd, 2025. Cheers. Adios. Enjoy.